Okay, so in this video I'm going to be looking at the TV series Euphoria, and specifically the therapy session from the character Jules in the series. Now, there's actually so much to pick apart in these therapy sessions that I'll be breaking it down into a few separate videos. In this particular sort of session right now, I'm going to focus in on around sort of a 5-minute segment of the therapy. And what I'm going to be doing is looking at some of the problems and difficulties that come up in this session, looking and analysing some of the themes that are there as well, and trying to make sense a bit of Jules's experience with being in therapy and some of these difficulties that she's trying to make sense of.
But when I was having this conversation with my friend, we were talking about how I feel like my entire life I've been trying to conquer femininity. And somewhere along the way, I feel like femininity conquered me.
Okay, so I think that's a really profound statement already to begin with here from Jules. And you'll tend to find, I think, within therapy, or one thing I've sort of learned over the years is that right at the beginning of a session, if we presume this is sort of the beginning of the session here, that a person will describe something that almost kind of encapsulates the whole problem, the whole struggle that they have. And you kind of spend the rest of the session or the rest of the therapy trying to figure that out. And what she's describing here is this conflict, but it sounds like that she's been dealing with. So there's something here around what she describes as her femininity. So something that she was sort of striving for, I guess, or something she wanted to conquer. And what she says there is that what's actually happened is that femininity has conquered her. Now, you probably, as a therapist, should be thinking about this and maybe wanting to know a little bit more detail about this. Like, what is it that she means with femininity? What does that mean to her? What was it that she was striving towards and wanted around sort of femininity? Because obviously that can mean many different things. You know, is it appearance? Is it sort of personality? Is it sort of how she is, what she does with sort of her life, and how she sort of lives? So there could be many different things sort of in this, so that there would be a lot to sort of pick apart in this. But what's really interesting is the way that she phrases this, that she wanted to conquer it and it conquered her. And I think this can be quite a common struggle that people face in terms of the fact that they are striving towards something for themselves. So maybe something they're passionate about, something that's important for them. But they almost ended up coming restricted by the thing that they are trying to get from themselves. So you could imagine here maybe that what she's referring to is that sort of there's something around femininity that she wanted for herself. She's really tried to push and create that life for herself. But maybe it's come along with some particular like rules or ways in which she has to live. And if she doesn't do that, then she's kind of harsh or critical on herself. And, you almost become sort of imprisoned by the thing that you wanted for yourself. So even just in that one sentence there, you could create a whole therapy. You could kind of, have at least this whole session really picking that apart about what this conflict is, what this struggle is, and maybe what she wants instead. How does she get back to the thing that she was striving for, this thing she wanted to conquer? How does she get back to that position so that it's not sort of overwhelming and conquering her instead?
I feel like femininity conquered me. What?
Okay, so just in that moment there, that was a really intense stare from Jules. So I'm just going to sort of go back and just watch that bit again, and just sort of look and pay attention to sort of the stare that she gives the therapist, and sort of how long she's sort of keeping eye contact. Obviously, she's not verbalizing anything at this moment in time, but the stare that she gives, just the way that she sort of looks at this therapist in sort of these few seconds.
Me.
What?
Okay, so that's a very intense stare. It's almost kind of looking into the soul of the therapist at that point, and that could be a lot of things going on for Jules there. So what we know is that she's just sort of voiced a something that she's struggling with, a problem that she has, and then she stares directly at the therapist. Now, so we could ask ourselves in this moment, why did Jules sort of look at the therapist in that way? Now, what we know is that she's just opened up about a problem that she has. And it may well be that the reason that she's looking at the therapist in this way is that she's waiting to see how the therapist will respond to this. Now, imagine that, say, Jules has had sort of difficult experiences before in opening up about her problems. So say maybe she's had like a negative experience around this. Now, it may well be then that she's going to be sort of making sure that if she opens up right now, that it's okay to do so. So she could be looking at the therapist to see, am I getting a positive response back? Is it okay for me to talk about this? But what you notice is that she's sort of looking, she kind of looks down a little bit as well and away. So she doesn't sort of continue with what she's sort of speaking about. So my thoughts are maybe that she's waiting to see how the therapist will respond and looking really intensely to pick up on any body language from the therapist as to have they taken this in a positive way. Because like I say, maybe she's expecting a negative response from the therapist here, or she wants to make sure that it's an okay thing to sort of talk about.
What?
What?
What was that thought?
Well,
Okay, and what a great response from the therapist there then. So the therapist has picked up on this right now. She could see that Jules was thinking about something. Now, it could have been easy to just ignore that. Jules could have gone off to speak about something else. This whole conversation could have been missed. But you saw there that she was thinking about something. She was having this sort of look at the therapist, and the therapist picks up on that. And asks her, what's going on right now? What's happening here in this moment? Let's see what these thoughts are that you're having right now.
What was that thought?
well, like, most girls, when you first talk to them, they like.
Okay, and then following this, you saw a bit of a switch in Jules right now. So she actually begins to continue with the story with the that she was probably thinking about there. So she's began to open up about this difficulty. She was probably checking just to see if it was okay to continue. The therapist has asked her, she's inquired, she's curious about what's going on for Jules, and following that then, you notice a sort of a bit of a shift in Jules's sort of body language, almost like she was kind of, I don't know, maybe potentially getting a little bit more comfortable, and she's like, okay, I can continue with what I'm thinking about here. I don't have to hold this in to myself, and actually by doing that, this is probably going to further the understanding of what Jules's problem is, so they can work on this.
Well, like, most girls, when you first talk to them, they like automatically analyze and compare themselves to you. And then, they search for where you fit in their hierarchy, and then they treat you accordingly.
What a hierarchy.
Okay, so she's beginning to add more details to this difficulty. So to begin with, we had this kind of general statement of the struggle she has with around femininity, and the next bit she's bringing in now is the way that girls treat her. It may be general in terms of how girls treat each other, but she's sort of describing a bit about her experience here, that you're analysed and you're judged and you're looked at. And to me already those words sound very critical. It's not sort of people observing you, understanding you, making sense of who you are so that that they see you in a positive light. To be analysed, to be sort of figuring you out and working out where you fit in. That sounds like kind of quite a critical experience here. So I think Jules is beginning to talk about kind of a difficulty in sort of her relationship with herself and with other girls.
Compare themselves to you. And then, you know, they search for where you fit in their hierarchy, and then they treat you accordingly.
What a hierarchy.
Like, how close you are to what they all collectively want to be, like in their heads.
Right.
And, you know, even if they've, like, mastered the art of hiding it with, like, smiles and nods and small talk, it's like, you can still catch them doing it. Like their eyes wandering over your face, or you know, the quick takes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so what she's talking about here is it seems like being judged by other people, to be criticized, to be observed. The fact that she's talking about it in a way that they're kind of hiding this observation would make you suggest that it must be a negative experience that she's been having. Now, there are a couple of thoughts that come into my mind around this. Now, obviously, this could be true. That actually her experience has been that girls tend to be very critical and negatively observe her. But my other thought in this is this something called externalization? What you tend to find in therapy, or what tends to sort of happen when people are critical of themselves, is that they will bring in examples of other people's perception of them. And actually what could be happening is she's also describing the relationship she has with herself. So again, we're not sure particularly what the problem is in this for her either. So it might be worth inquiring what is it about the way that people observe or judge you that causes you a problem. You know, that could be a way to go with this, because sometimes people are horrible. You know, that can be a thing. There are lots of horrible, nasty people out there who will make horrible, nasty judgments and criticize us. But for each individual person, that will impact on them in a different way. So it might be worth here just to have a conversation with her about what's the impact of this on you. How is this a problem for you? What is it in this that we can work on together to help you? Or it might be another avenue of questioning here might be, okay, well, you're talking here about the way that you are observed and judged by others. I wonder if you also observe and judge yourself. Because she's already described here, potentially to begin with, something around femininity, a difficulty she has with this. She's talking here about potentially being negatively criticised and judged by other people. So in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, there's definitely some criticism in this, there's some judgment. And I wonder if she also views herself in the same way. Because if she does, then what can happen is that if somebody criticises you and you're already very critical of yourself, it's like a tag team. You've got two people sort of attacking you. Whereas if somebody criticises you, but you yourself know that there's nothing wrong with you, you don't need to be criticised, then you can sort of take a position to say, well, actually, I don't deserve to be criticised or judged in the way that you are. But again, these are kind of some ideas or assumptions or things that I'd be holding on to in my mind. But, none of that potentially is any of these bits that Jules is talking about here. And that's why kind of like inquiring and asking her, what's the problem in this? Or like I say, is this something that you identify in yourself? Do you treat yourself the same way as these other girls do as well? Just trying to locate what the issue is in this for her.
Up and down your body, or like they watch how your clothes hang off your torso, or like they look for what tags are on your clothes to see where you shop, or they'll watch your hands to find like fucked up cuticles or chipped nail polish. Honestly, it would be a kind of sensual experience if it wasn't so fucking terrifying.
Okay, so that really sort of highlights this dynamic then. To be observed. Now, if you are observed in a really positive, kind way, maybe it could feel, like you said, that essential experience, actually a really nice experience. Imagine being somebody looking at you in a really positive way, where they want to know about you. They're looking at all the bits of you. Well, what a lovely experience that will be. But if they're doing that in a really negative, critical way, they're trying to pick up on your flaws, like you're saying that, or they're picking up on the cuticles on my nail. So they're looking for flaws in you. And if somebody's looking for flaws in you and they're going to see you in a negative way, then actually that's going to be a terrifying experience. Well, maybe that would be something that would be worth looking into again. Why is it so anxiety provoking for somebody to be critical of her? And it might well be, again, because that's tapping into her own criticism of herself. They criticise me in the way that I criticise myself, and that's quite anxiety provoking. But again, this is highlighting something about judgments on herself. And really nicely put by her there, that actually this would be kind of a nice experience if it wasn't so critical.
So they want to find flaws.
Yeah, most girls.
Okay, so one other potential dynamic in this as well then is the fact that this therapist is a woman. She is a woman sat looking at Jules, and what Jules is describing here is that she finds that most girls tend to be critical and observing of her. So if we think back to sort of the beginning of this sort of piece of the session, she clearly was holding back on voicing her problems. And if you're going to therapy, you're talking about your problems, your difficulties, the things you're struggling with. Well, if you're describing here that girls tend to pick up on your flaws in a negative way, the likelihood that dynamic is going to play out in the therapy too. So this is something I imagine the therapist is going to have to hold on to in her mind, is Jules going to start seeing her in the same way that she sees other girls, or is attention being paid on her right now seen as a positive or negative thing? Because in therapy you are being observed, you're actually having careful attention paid to you. But if you see careful attention paid to you as a negative, critical experience, it potentially makes the therapy feel intolerable. So it might well be that the therapist is going to have to address that at some point, and think about the fact that, okay, when I observe you, when I ask about you, when I pay attention to the details of what you're bringing here, Jules, do you see that as a positive or a negative experience? And my guess would be that actually if she's able to name this as, actually this is really nice for somebody to pay attention to me in a really positive way, there's going to be some emotions that's going to bring up for her, probably some sadness about the fact that that's not something she's experienced before. But it will help the therapy, it will help them to work together if that is addressed in this.